Obtaining consent. Keep in mind that the carriers now require you to get permission for every recipient they're going to send messages to prior to you sending them messages. Now, there are 3 types of messages, and each type of message has a different level of consent that's required. The first one is conversational. Conversational messages are actually have the lowest burden or lowest requirement for consent. What a conversational message requires is one of 2 things. Either they messaged you first and you're responding back to them to have a conversation with them, or they in some form, verbally, written, doesn't really matter, told you they want to receive SMS messages from you. So that's as simple as saying on phone, hey, mind if I shoot you a text? They say, yes, you have consent, you're good to go for conversational messages. Again, the burden is very, very low. Essentially what the carriers just want to make sure is that, yes, you're only messaging people that you should be messaging, that know you're going to be messaging them. The burden gets much higher for informational and promotional messages. Informational messages, the carriers do require that you have express consent, again, either verbal consent or written consent. The good news is it doesn't need to be logged. So once again, it can be as simple as send an email, hey, do you mind if I send you a text? They say yes. Ask you on the phone, do you mind if I send you a text? They say yes. Just in some way, they have to let you know that they're okay with receiving messages from you. This, again, does not need to be logged, but it is critical that these messages do have the opt-out language and that you do honor opt-outs. Promotional messages, these have the highest level requirement, and this is the one that carriers are really, really concerned about and worried about. Promotional messages must have express, written, and logged consent. That means verbal consent is no longer good enough. It must be in written form. It must be logged, and they actually have a list of criteria that they expect to be logged. And at any time, they can request evidence of that for any number. So they can come to you and say, hey, we need you to show us how you got permission for this number. And this is the information that we expect you to provide. And if you don't have that, they can actually take action against you. Now, where that's going to come into play is if you're caught spamming, you have spam complaints, you have policy violations. Again, this is to ensure that you're only messaging people who want to receive your messages. You're not saying unsolicited messages. If you're working with a vendor and you're texting them and having a conversation about the work that they're doing, you're not going to run into an issue. If you are mailing 10,000 people a promotion for your business and none of them have even heard of your business or subscribed to hear from you, you're going to have a problem. That's what consent is here, is just make sure you're only sending messages to people that want to receive messages. In terms of how this works, there'll be no change in how you use SMS today. There's no opt-in message from RingCentral. There's no confirmation, did you want to receive this message? Your message is treated as trusted and the recipient is treated as opted in until proven otherwise. So basically, if they do a spam complaint, then obviously we're going to say, okay, that person isn't opted in. But we are going to trust that you have the consent. It is ultimately your responsibility to have consent. And in the case of promotional messages, your responsibility to be able to demonstrate consent to the carriers. So again, we're going to trust you. There's going to be no impact. It's not going to change the way you use SMS. It's not going to change the way that your customers or recipients receive SMS. All right, opt out. This is a big one. And actually, I was just going through the T-Mobile guidelines for providers. And in the T-Mobile guidelines, it says that a recipient can withdraw consent at any time in any way. Doesn't matter the type of message. It can be conversational, informational, promotional. If someone asks you to stop texting them in any format, you have to stop texting them. But you absolutely have to allow them to tell you to stop texting them via SMS. So you can't say, no, you have to go to a promotional or to our website and do the notification preferences, or you need to call. They have to be allowed to opt out anyway, and they have to be allowed to opt out via text. The most common way people opt out via text is they reply stop, they reply unsubscribe, or they reply stop messaging me. If someone does stop messaging you, if someone does request for you to stop messaging them, you do need to stop messaging them. Now, conversational use cases, you may not have an autoresponder that replies back and says, we've received your opt-out request. Again, right now, the carriers aren't worried about that as much as they are you going to stop messaging them? In terms of managing opt-outs and preventing you from messaging people who've opted out, and also having that auto response, that is something RingCentral is working on. That's something that we'll be releasing hopefully fairly soon. And it's also something that a lot of the carriers and aggregators already have in place, where they'll automatically block the message or automatically send that notification saying you've opted out. That being said, even when RingCentral has a solution available for you, even though many of the carriers and aggregators are doing this, it's still at the end of the day, it's technically the sender's responsibility to make sure they're only sending to people who they have consent to send to. And if someone withdraws that consent or asks them to stop messaging them, that they stop messaging them. Again, this isn't something that's designed to be a significant burden. It's not something designed to cause businesses significant harm or challenges. It literally is, if someone says stop messaging them, stop messaging them. That's really the number one ask from the carriers. So number one, make sure they want to receive your messages and make sure your level of consent falls in line with the type of message you're sending. Again, they're not really worried about conversational or informational messages. They are worried about promotional messages. That being said, make sure your opt-in language meets what's in the requirements. Because if you just say, oh, I'm doing conversational, and you don't tell them how you're actually getting consent, then it will get rejected. So you'll need to tell them how you're getting consent for those conversational messages. Opt out again, just stop messaging them.